Alright, now it's time to do the branding of the 5 war chiefs so we can get to the final portion of the game.
Wait, hold
Since
on.
when? Since when did the main character become Jesus? He's glowing everywhere.
It's funny, Jibs. For a moment, I thought you were about to say, Jibs. Since when did the main character become Batman?
Actually, I think it looks more like a Jedi spirit.
We've been doing that pretty much since the beginning, guys.
I was thinking Batman when Tio
Oh
mentioned.
no, I know. I was just
Well,
explaining to
the others didn't, apparently.
Well, I mean, Joe, Batman, guy who stays in the shadows, glowing.
Well,
I
remember-
think you can see the
Hold
negative there.
on,
No
I
one
was
hasn't read Blackest Night.
that too. Yeah. Believe it or not, Dwibs, Batman does actually make it a point. You know that very bright symbol on his suit here? He actually made that intentionally because usually that part of the suit is incredibly magnetic or bulletproof, or has a special mechanism that deflects bullets using a magnet field or something. He
Yeah.
specifically attracts attention to that point. But that being said, the reason I was thinking Batman when Tio mentioned branding was because, well, that was Zack Snyder's ever so dark image of Batman in Batman v Superman, where Batman would brand criminals and that would then make them targets in prison.
Yeah.
Alright, in order to do all the war chiefs, you need to do the same thing they did in the first half of the game, essentially get to their spawning zone and do something, a specific action that will trigger their appearance. In this case, killing their specific 5 of their supporters without triggering, the alarm, which is, again, fairly easy now that we have the release. Again, the major difference is that instead of killing them, we need to brand them. Or, alternatively, what we could have done potentially, if I recall correctly, I forgot if I ever did for this, is to have one of our branded captains ascend to that wall, like Ratback did. It's entirely possible.
Again, way to climb up the corporate ladder or outright manipulate it.
No, it's,
Yeah.
Also, I get the feeling it was just Dwebs. The thing you have to understand about Dwebs, Theo, that I've come to understand from knowing all these years, that you always have to assume that he will forget everything. It's best if you do it that way. It's always worked out for me so far.
Well, I mean, in this scenario,
There he is.
you could assume I've never read a particular comic based on a certain storyline.
Well, I get that. I was talking about
Anyway,
the main character's
alright. In this case, as you noticed, I managed to brand all of these guys bodyguards, so this fight will be pretty much one-sided.
Everybody, turn on him!
You can go on slaying my boys without waking my whole garrison.
Not so much slaying them, more like turning them on you.
Man, what are you doing? No!
Dogpile him into oblivion! Shame you can't, brand, the absolute top members.
What do you mean?
Well, this guy, Frack, you...
Well, that's what I'm here to do.
My boys will hear about this, and you'll suffer.
Oh, running away now.
Yeah, I mean, now, to be honest, Jova, if he did that, if he managed to use his mind control on, the top people of Mordor, the entirety of Middle Earth, the story, would be over in, a year, tops.
Trust me, Dibs, the game of this and the sequel are actually going somewhere with this.
Maggot. The wrath of Sauron himself will fall upon you for this.
Oh no, I'm
You will-
so
you will,
scared.
You will, I know, you will take the ring from Sauron and throw it into the volcano.
Yep. So you can
Now
brand them
remember,
up top.
around this point, Dibs, nobody knows where the ring is. Only
wasn't-
only Gollum does, but in vague terms.
And I take it the ring wasn't with Bilbo at this point.
Yes, it was. Remember, this is
was.
studied
Oh, I
in
get
the
him.
60 years that passed between the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
They-
If you forgot, there was an artifact that talked about the Battle of the 5 Armies.
That's the thing, though, is the thing is, Gollum knows Bilbo has the ring, or at least he probably always assumed that, But he doesn't know where Bilbo lives.
He just knows the vague terms, which were the ones that Sauron eventually extrapolated: Shire and the family name Baggins.
He never went there, though.
No, Gollum actually. That's because, again, like you said, one thing that the appendices tell is that Aragorn and Legolas stalked the ass out of Gollum during those 60 years. Did manage to briefly capture him a bit, but the guy just, managed to get away.
Yep.
And unfortunately, remember, Gandalf himself tells that he was on his tail, but Sauron got to him first.
Given Gollum used to be a hobbit, I wonder what the Shire would think seeing a hobbit in that state.
If you forgot, the Hobbit clan that he was part of was one that was on the eastern side of the Misty Mountains, and as such, by the time of the events of the Hobbit, it has been essentially extinct. So it would be kind of like if, well, it's kind of a bit feeling. It's like what the New 52 did with the previous predecessor of the Scarab, previous to Jaime Reyes, which was Mesoamerican, that eventually, was entombed and then woke up, way later on the line.
Right.
There you go. In this case, I trigger the encounter with the war chief thanks by instigating, a fight with another. You even get a trophy if you do so.
So, in that regard, with these guys under your branding control, what is the extensive stuff you can do with like war chiefs under your command?
Oops, I killed him.
Oh.
Well, shit.
Never mind. Well, like I said, I can just let one of my, again, I came prepared and just let one of my other branded pawns take his place.
Congrats, you've been promoted.
Yeah, Little Kingdom promotion.
Don't worry. Your life expectancy's gone up by a day, but still, it's gone up.
But yeah, no, like I was asking, what's the extent of stuff you can do with war chiefs under your command?
Again, functionally they're the same as the captains, but they're just more powerful in general.
Can you have them do any directives or anything that can help
you? Can do that with everyone if you want, It's just a matter of, you're pointing them to another direction or, encountering them to gather more information if you want. Like I said, the second game, I even talked about this, give me a second, Waves. The second game again allows you to do a bit more complex commands because that game also as the expansion a bit in terms of mechanic of having to handle fortresses in which each of the war chief has a particular role, so you can decide to attack one of them, leave them be, plant bodyguards on them in order to make sure they're spied on. Stuff like that.
Your own little war politics sim.
Literally, at one point, Italian will even define that to Celebrimbor, but we're not there yet. Yes, Dweebs, there you go. What I'm essentially doing now, when you can potentially kill an enemy via stealth, via R2 plus square, what you can instead do is R2 plus triangle, in which Talion will forego the stealth to actually apply this brutalization kill. It will not, functionally stealth, meaning that everyone will see them, but as a result, because of the brutalness of killing, most of the other orcs will be actually going to a panic frenzy and potentially run away. Not Captain, obviously, but it's perfect for crowd control if you want to, dispel a large crowd and want to focus just on a captain via stealth.
So what sort of information can you get from people you brainwashed? Is it like just typical,
They function just like the same of the dwarves. Essentially, again, at any point you can interrogate a captain that you branded, in order to gain more information on one that you do not know anything about.
So do you get any cool flavor text, or is it mainly
No,
the game?
It's just again their combat information.
Okay.
Oops, I killed this guy too. Alas.
Guess we'll have to promote someone else then.
Yeah. In this case, it's a bit more casual the way they're promoted, unless you impart a direct command, as in order, one of the bodyguards to actually kill them. that can happen. But again, in the second game, you can manipulate more things into you like controlling, deciding who goes where.
I dig how they all get custom upgraded looks for each stance of
Yes,
the government.
like I
that
said,
they're in.
when we get to the war chiefs, their armor and weapons will be updated consequentially, and they will gain new perks to boot. Again, like I said, this can bite your ass if you're not prepared, because a particular war chief that has a set of resistances and not many weaknesses that can potentially fuck you up can become essentially your worst nightmare. As in someone you will be very hard to get rid of. You will need to actually test all that you can do. Again, the game does not technically soft lock you that way, because even the worst kind of opponent can still be damaged in a couple of ways. For example, the insta-kill attack of a Graug. They can easily be damaged by other orcs. So if you manage to actually gather up a lot of followers and aim them all of them at the same time against the target, that could work out. And the square plus X move, the flash of light that surrounds, like a force of impact that Tyrion does, that always do damage, and no one is immune of that. So worst case scenario, you can still do damage to a war chief that can potentially be, but at the same time be immune to your arrows, be immune to stealth, resistant to executions, have a shield, be immune to being involved over. Those things can happen because, again, the Nemesis system is designed to potentially, give these RNG capabilities, which actually, leads me to talk about something else while we're at it, because I didn't talk about much about the history, but this monolith, believe it or not, they were specialized in doing something very different before, making these games. They were specialized in first-person shooters. They did back in the day the Blood series, which at least the first one is actually a cult classic, essentially Doom clones. But when they did the Fear, it's an acronym, FEAR, series under Warner Bros. And that was actually, again, super well received. But for some reason, Warner Bros. Just decided to put them to do this kind of thing, which, again, I like the game, but it feels very odd, and I can imagine the Fear fan base is not particularly too happy, to see this particular shift. Not to mention, it's worth mentioning, however, that since from the little bit I've seen, the Fear games are actually praised for the complex AI of the enemies. So it seems that this studio is actually specialized in creating that, because, again, the Nemesis system seems to operate on similar logistics, only that the AI enemy of the Fear games is more something that reacts to the moment, that has the enemies needing to decide, when to stay cover, when to flank you, to respond to baits or not. So again, it's more of a case of the studio is capable of creating interesting, pattern and complex, kind of type of enemies, just in different ways. And in this case, I need to release the Caragors from their cages. And again, without setting the alarm. Again, the good thing is that the Caragors, as soon as they're freed from the cages, will always attack on sight anyone. The only Caragors who do not attack immediately an orc are the ones that are actually, rode by proper, captains and war chiefs. Unless you actually decide to tame them, because you can, those will never attack other orcs. But the ones in cages, yes, absolutely.
Oh boy.
Again, that's kind of what they need to do. It's to represent also the chaos that I'm spreading.
I will say this. Part of me thought that this game would feel a bit bigger. Not to say that it feels tiny or anything, but I guess it feels like, we had like a first half with one region, and now we're in essentially the second half. I'm
like
guessing
I said, there's also a couple of stuff that I did not show that it's not really important, like gathering the herbs, or hunting down the other creatures in our world. The game does have stuff that will keep you busy, that it just didn't show for the sake of convenience and time. But when it comes to both the side missions and the main ones, there isn't a lot, because, again, this game was released, at the cusp, the the point where one console generation was ending and the other was beginning, and as such, it was still not in a case of games being bigger because we were on the PS4
To
and
be
Xbox
fair.
One.
To be fair, while I did mention I expected this game to feel bigger, that doesn't mean that I think it feels too small. I get the inkling that what this is an obvious first game, but the sequel will expand on the size of the world.
Yes. Again, it's a simple case of the second game was built immediately for instead this specific console generation, and as such it's actually bigger, better, with a lot more stuff to do.
So, it's all good.
There we go. With
That's
this,
bad.
we got all the war chief spots occupied. With this, we can finally move our final assaults.
Alright, mate, you're the new war chief now.
Yep. Again, that's how it works with.
So now that we have our own little private army, we can take the fight to the bad guys once and for all.
Not on Barad-dûr, because that's still under construction. What we need to do is instead, fight the Black Hand and his remaining lackeys.
We wish to thank you for coming to our aid, Captain.
Aye.
So yeah, this is also the last time that we will see the Queen of Nurnen and Ditharael.
They're here.
Unfortunately, we do not return in the sequel, but Talion gives a brief mention that they managed to get away from Mordor.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Lady. Keep that plank level.
I mean, they were fine allies. We got a neat little reference to
I'd say,
the
again,
Lord of the
I'd
Rings
say
trilogy.
these sporadic encounters works better than in the Mad Max video game. That one really has some one-offs that are never brought back.
I guess it is best if you essentially consider this game to be a series of Talion meeting up with these quirky characters, but
It's kind of like Twilight Princess when you get down to that. Talion, Talion has his own agenda and things to do and everything, and warrior Ulster, but you occasionally will come across, separate characters, each with their own kind of, stories and what they want to do, but it will be more of a spectator rather than, being directly involved in their lives.
I think my favorite of these characters is still the dwarf. But it's not... Yeah, I feel like he's definitely the one who's had, kind of funnily enough, the most involvement. In fact, the only reason he doesn't follow us for the rest of our journey is just Talion pulling some Arkham City stuff of, no, I have to do this on my own.
So yeah, now we need to defeat the tower, but first, the game is gonna pull something. If at this point you had someone who has killed you multiple times, your personal nemesis, they will show up here. Unfortunately, since I've been a good boy enough and I killed literally everyone and never really been killed that much, the game instead does something else. They pull someone who I killed, they resurrect them, and as you can see, the fact that he has a bandage and face is because I killed him previously, and they will try to have their own personal revenge.
Again, given the amount of lines or potential designs they would have had to have for this sort of system, I definitely appreciate the dedication to the Nemesis system. To the point where even story-wise, you can legit have your own.
It's more than I can ask when it comes to having a potential set of complex stories, completely dependent on the gameplay rather than scripted lines and in cutscenes. It's definitely something more unique than something that should be done all the time. Definitely, because I cannot really see this being applicable to literally everything.
Honestly,
but it strangely works, and in this day and age, we're trying to find a balance between gameplay and story is a bit more dedicated than beforehand. It's definitely endearing to me.
Honestly, with all the money games are costing just because of graphics alone, I'd say this: if you have to have a AAA or quadruple A budget, I'd rather the money be put into stuff like cool variations like these instead of trying to get graphics to look uber realistic, which, drains a ton of money into the stuff here.
Mind you, again, we will have to talk about also one particular downside that the sequel had, but we'll have to get to that first.
Get to it when we get to it. But yeah, no, I mean, again, Honestly, it is nice that this game is showing how possible variation in games can be, which, yeah, no, really does blend the lines between gameplay and story.
Again, it's just a shame that this system, decided that Warner Bros. And Monet decided to, patent not for themselves, but just to apply a patent. So if anyone wants to get, they kind of need to pay for it.
I wasn't expecting.
That said, I am interested to see how we're going to use it on the Wonder Woman game.
Right.
Did that corpse just talk to us?
I hope my soldiers gave you a warm welcome.
Ganondorf!
Not this shit again.
Aye.
Show yourself.
Oh, trust me, he loves to do this sort of stuff in several video
And
games.
in case you're wondering, because the voice might sound familiar, no, that's not there in the poll, voicing the tower, because even though I thought it was, because this was around the time he started using this kind of voice for his career. No, that's still JV Blank.
Huh. Maybe he wanted to sound more foreboding for that sequence.
Well, yeah, you'll see just in a second if you forgot his design from the initial cutscenes, but the tower is basically a Hellraiser Cenobite.
This is reminding me a lot of the Death Zone from Castlevania Lord of Shadows.
I will deliver you to the Dark Lord.
So that's his true form, I guess.
Well, that's the tower. The hand is still, near the Black Gate.
The Dark Lord forgives you, Celebrimbor. Return to him and cast off this human.
No, I've learned to respect this human through the story.
Up and fight. There's no need, Ranger. Celebrimbor is your curse.
Here's our major first truth. Celebrimbor was not really bound to us, and we were fighting to, to free the curse. He chose to actually, inhabit the course of Talion.
Oh boy.
Yes, that's all you are, Ranger. A vessel for the Ringmaker.
Yeah, first let's just deal with him.
Hey, at least I can still...
Wow, didn't really affect him that much.
Well, think about it, Dwib. Sure, yeah. As far as he knows, he's a vessel, but the guy
We
he
will have
really...
time to talk about this later.
Keep in mind, though, the Black Hand is there, so he can still take his vengeance, so...
Alright, you have 8 minutes to defeat the tower. I actually never managed to fail this fight, so I don't know if after the countdown he actually kills you or not. But, it's still a challenge nonetheless. And in order for this to work, it's a set of a stealth mission instead of having a proper boss fight. You're supposed to, there you go, to find all the different copies of the tower and actually brand them to banish them. Kind of like in an exorcism,
Interesting how that works, isn't it? But hey, it adds some variation to the boss fights.
Instead of having the proper... But again, if you remember, the fight against the Hammer was not particularly, direct, and we will see just soon enough how not really creative the fight against the Hand is gonna be.
Does
hey,
it amount
it
to
provides
some...
a new scenario. Again, you can also, if you play the sequel, you guys know about the audience, but maybe has, if for one who has already played the sequel, you can definitely see a bit of inspiration already from this in order to have the mechanics about, the fortress and what you can do around them. Because this is a completely new location. They did not even recycle the war map for this, so this is actually a complete new, place.
I wonder if they call this guy the Tower because he's tied to this location in his life force.
It's more of a case of the suit of armor. Each of the Dark Numenorians represent an aspect of Sauron. The movie has his mouth, as is one that speaks for him. The hand will be the proper agent. The hammer represents, brute strength. And in this case, the tower, defense. In this case, the suit of armor.
Interesting. Although you'd think
Yeah,
they call him
throughout
the
the fight,
shield
we
in
have,
that regard.
And now we have yet to go back to Yoret, apparently, but methinks the tower is up again to his trickery.
Yeah.
The the humming that we hear is the one of Talion's wife.
Oh, my love, I've come back from the dead. You can totally stop fighting the tower and we can go off and be happy. Swear on me,
Well,
Mom.
maybe they can. It's more of a case of the tower by killing him. Oh, look at that, just like at the beginning. Cute. Oh shit.
Cockblocked.
You will never see your family again.
Oh, that was just a dick move. Huh. Wow. Tower really kind of was an epic fail guy. He tries to talk him out of it and then kind of just dies for his troubles.
There you go, just to be sure.
Double tap. Yeah, maybe disguising yourself as his wife to piss him off wasn't a good idea.
Along.
You deceived me.
Yeah, well,
It was
this.
Sauron's doing. This was your doing! I should have died with my family.
I thought you wanted revenge. I can leave you. But there is only one way to close the circle. The Black Hand remains.
So yeah, here's the deal. Despite, you know, them being Italian understandably being pissed off, if we kill the Black Hand, Celebrimbor will leave fair and square. Oh, no strings attached.
I can dig that. Again, Talion is rightfully pissed, but he doesn't let it absolutely cloud his eyes from the
It's
task
an
at
unfortunate
hand.
situation where more important things are at hand than, you know, that his own personal, that his own, you know, feelings.
I know some people might think it's rushed, but I feel like it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Well, okay, to be fair, it's not like we could have a second act breakup because they're literally tethered to each other. So... yeah.
Now it's time for the last mission, actually. Since, again, the Black Hand came in the meantime and trashed a bit the place. And it's also time to see the final memory that Celebrimbor had that we haven't seen yet. Again, thankfully the others managed to get away in time, but...
all from a tiny little cup.
Actually, no, it's not that one.
Oh, Celebrimbor, you sure got yourself into some trouble. And again,
I
doing...
got him. There you go, Gollum is here to give us the last artifact that we need. The crown that Celebrimbor wore when he was alive. Remember, if you don't know, he was actually the king of the region that eventually will become Mordor. So Sauron kinda, you know, was a despot to boot.
Look at that, Gollum
So, yeah.
to the rescue.
If you remember, if you forgot, Sauron essentially convinced Celebrimbor to forge the Rings of Power, and as such gave him the art to forge the One Ring. Again, forged in the middle of Mount Doom.
Boy, Sauron really did just make a 10-step plan just to have a nice piece of jewelry.
Yeah, we're infusing part of his essence in it, a huge part of it. But he did not count on the fact that Celebrimbor saw this vision, if you forgot with Galadriel, and made sure that the ring would work for him. As such, he stole it.
Ha!
And again, being imbued with that kind of power, he had a more of an equal footing against Sauron.
So Sauron literally just got trolled.
Yeah.
I can see why he doesn't want anyone to remember his past. Really, Gollum?
Thief! It was mine to keep.
Be gone.
Again, I have to commend Lime O'Brien. He's almost indistinguishable to Circus to me.
Yeah.
Huh. You know...
So yeah, just in time for Mount Doom to start erupting again. If you don't remember, because it was mentioned sporadically, whenever this happens, you do know that dark times are ahead for Middle-earth.
You know, the more we see of Sauron's past, the more one does wonder how did this pretty boy really rise to prominence.
Remember, he was the number 2 of the bigger battle of the Silmarillion, the Melkor, aka Morgoth. So, anyway, for our last mission, we traveled back to the Black Gate, because I guess that's where the Black Hand of Sauron is. Along with our warship, because we have a final rush against 5 not selected, but less casual, more like constructed, the Talons of the Black Hand. 5 orcs colored properly in red, with very huge stats.
Oh boy.
For all intents and purposes, this is our major final challenge.
So let me guess, take out the lead and you essentially cut off
No,
the...
we need to kill all of them.
Alright then.
Kill them all, I say.
Again, this is why it's important for you to have your warships properly ready and in good shape.
Sure would be a shame if your branded warships turned on you, though, after all those stats you built up.
No, they don't really do that. The second game has something like that going on.
Yeah, I was wondering if they pull a Sonic battle, wherein the more you build up your custom character, the harder a time you're in for.
Yeah. That's the idea, Joe. Make sure you know in advance which battles you're supposed to fight against Emerald, so you can, before the battle, bring full of shit cards so that it becomes easier.
Pretty much, yeah.
I've a mind to bind you to a rock on the side of Mount Doom and let its new fires eat you from the legs up.
Oh, thank you.
That's a new one.
But again, since this is actually basically at the end of the game, these particular rocks have quotes that reflect what's going on at the moment.
Again.
-1.
Oh. There goes one finger. God forbid you could brand those guys too.
No. Well, okay, maybe I can, but it's actually easier just to kill them off. I never tried, admittedly.
Again, I can only imagine just the amount of recording that went into all these lines for all the different actors.
Okay, again, it kind of makes sense considering there aren't a lot of them, like roughly around 7 or 8 for the orc lines, and a bit more for the sequel. But it's still like a huge amount, especially again because in the sequel they have to take into account in a lot of different other situations too.
Like
and not to mention they need to give also different inflections of voice to represent different types of personalities. So it's not even the same thing that happens all the time.
I wonder if this may have been one of those sessions where they actually let the actors act alongside the footage that they're watching to get a good idea for that stuff.
I think it's more of a case where the writers, the writer, I forgot how many writers were in this, or the game dev, conceptualized each encounter, potentially what would be a thing that the banter, would say, stuff like that, and then moved on from there.
So when you say 2 expands on certain circumstances, is this like stuff as much as like, doing stuff in certain story orders, or possibly...
Not necessarily. Well, the story order, yes, because sometimes we reflect, but it will mostly depend also on the actions that you perform. So, for example, you have planted a spy in a location. Maybe one of the enemies that is there will actually know about that, and if you actually go against that, they will say, "Oh, we know you have a spy, and we will find them." And if you actually don't manage to kill them, when it comes to big confrontations, and everything, that spy will be found and actually be killed because of that. So it's also another way of the game to actually warn you without giving you, a direct hint.
Very nice.
So yeah, again, that's our major goal. Let's kill the Black Hand of Sauron so that Sauron cannot be resurrected.
I think I heard about these games, but I don't remember them getting huge buzz, but I'm pretty sure that they sold well, didn't they?
Yes, don't worry, and even received critical praise. Again, the second one is a bit of a stigma for one reason, but we'll get to it.
The years they came out. One was 2014, when was the other one?
2017.
Huh, I wonder why I don't remember hearing much about this around the times.
There we go. Alright, this is about to get a bit stupid, unfortunately.
Oh boy.
I have a gift for you, Celebrimbor.
Ow.
Force field.
And there you go, the last sequence that we need. Celebrimbor amassed an army of orcs to fight against Sauron while using his ring. This was again still in the Second Age before the last alliance, while his family was hostage.
Though, given what we know about the Lord of the Rings trilogy...
Well, that's what we're here to find out. Remember, Sauron was still able to, assume a physical form in this, but he still needed the ring to be complete. So it was on the verge of victory, but remember, the ring still had Sauron's will in it, so...
Make sure... Hey Sauron, why didn't you do that
Thought about that part, didn't you?
Hey Sauron, why didn't you do that the first time he stole the ring?
It was caught off guard.
So I wanted to just troll the guy.
And this is how Celebrimbor died, along with his family, tortured, and had his head bashed with his own smithing hammer.
Wow, Sauron was feeling extra vindictive that day.
The Dark Lord gave you a second chance to stand by his side. Now I give you no choice. We shall be sealed together in death.
No, thank you. So what the Black Hand does, we don't even fight him. He kills himself in order to actually bring Sauron.
Okay.
It's about to get even worse.
Because he just dies.
Hold on.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
what kind of dying?
Separated, Talion dies.
So Sauron was flipping back at some time.
And yeah, so that's our final boss, a set of QTEs, and not even a particularly complex one. I have no idea. Again, somehow this is worse than the final. Oh no, this is worse than the final boss of Thieves in Time. There you go. That's your last bit. There you go. This particular sequence.
We strike down Sauron.
And you're done.
So we basically took down Sauron. Wow. That was super easy. Barely an inconvenience.
Wow, that was even worse than the final sequence of Rise Son of Rome.
Talion, my heart, we will be together soon. Forever.
So, Celebrimbor is actually, again, being a good sport and willing to let Talion go.
The shore is calling us.
Just give up because there's nothing they can do. Unfortunately, Talion has still a sense of duty.
Well, hey, at least we beat Sauron for the time being.
And again, I kind of like the fact that this is also important. This is Talion's decision. Celebrimbor is not forcing him to stay.
Could you really rest for all of eternity? Knowing that you have
By the way, what the fuck was that fight?
Okay, this is kind of a bit of a shame because, again, going off of Lord of the Rings lore, we know it's not going...
We will see how things will align, don't worry.
Okay.
Because Talion has an idea, an awful idea, a wonderful, awful idea.
time has come for a new race.
Yeah.
Wow.
Talion is speaking just like Boromir. Let's forge a ring and have it being used as a weapon against the enemy.
Wasn't
that's our
that kind of
sequel
what
book.
led to this whole ring in the first place?
Well, that's what we will need to fight technically in the sequel. But again, before our final thoughts, let me just again mention this. What was this thought process that so many companies had when they look at the first Uncharted, the final boss fight against Navarro, they were like, yeah, we can make it worse than that. Because again, I don't understand this concept that games that for a lot of time where final bosses were non-existent or just as simple as press one button to win. Fable 2 is super guilty of this too, also.
I mean, the Final Fight Navarro at the very least, you know, like actually had gameplay. It wasn't a QTE. I mean,
well, it had QTEs, but you still needed to take cover for the most part.
Like,
to actually shoot.
There was actually interactivity.
Like,
that's my basic point.
Okay, the reason this is so disappointing isn't just the fact that it's bad, but this is coming off of, well, a game that for all intents and purposes had very engaging gameplay, so
like
why are we
said,
getting a QTE fest out of nowhere?
Did they just run out of ideas all of a sudden?
Or they run out of time. You can definitely,
Money.
again, there might be also the feeling that the game was potentially slightly rushed towards its end, but it's really just speculation. I cannot tell. I can tell you that the second game has better boss fights and a more satisfying final boss fight at the very least.
Like,
So,
I mean,
you can look forward to that.
that is a good point, though. It's not just the game, but kind of the story. Don't get me wrong, the story just ended off on, well, I guess, a cliffhanger.
Get down to it.
Yeah, like, honestly, it makes this game feel like pretty much an apparent part one, which, yeah, it was.
And yeah, you can definitely tell because, like I said, the second game has more of everything. More story, more areas to explore, more things to do, more interactions with the orc and everything.
And I'll be honest, that last cutscene feels like a mid cutscene as opposed to what's supposed to be like the final
cutscene. You can tell
cutscene.
this is the Arkham Asylum to an upcoming Arkham City, something unique in genre, but not too big, and with a self-contained story that preludes to something bigger. But for the time being, let's get to our final thoughts. Dweebs.
That was a game.
There was
Yeah, I'll be honest. The story wasn't really all that engaging to me. To me, it just comes off as generic, dark, gritty story in a game made around the middle of the 2010s that just happens to have bits of Lord of the Rings in it. And it's really not that much more interesting than any of those other ones that I've seen. The gameplay looks like the best part of it, with all sorts of nice fluid combat. And then can you call it a final boss happens?
No, not really. For all intents and purposes, the Talons are the real final boss.
Which, don't get me wrong, it was a nice fight, but still, all that build-up to fight the Black Hand, and we essentially get nothing. That's like if you had a
consolation prize you can get, if I can tell you already. I forgot. Yeah, I think you get it for finishing the campaign. You can unlock the Black Hand as a costume skin for Talion to play with. I think I will showcase a bit of it.
Huh, that's interesting. Anyway, carry on, Dweebs.
But then that weird thing happened where all of a sudden the final boss is just a cutie, and not even a very in-depth one. You just do stuff and then that's it. Game done. I mean, imagine other games ended that way.
Do you have anything else, Dweebs? Actually, what about the music? Do you have any particular memories? Like, do you think it's just me,
There was music in this game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if there were, I could barely remember any of it.
I can tell you that the composers will be the same for the next game, but the next game will try to be more similar to James Horner's original score. So you can...
Between Howard Shore?
Howard Shore, my bad. See, the original trilogy's, original score. So while not properly identical, probably due to copyright reason, they will still try to emulate that kind of feeling. So that would be an improvement also to that.
Well, I hope so, because the scoring here left fob. I mean, it wasn't really. Well, it wasn't. I couldn't remember any of it. There's like a very, although it does at least fit the game itself. A game with a bland story deserves bland music. So there's that. So there you are, Shadow of Mordor, a generic, gritty, mid-2010 story with Lord of the Rings just plastered on it.
Pedro?
I guess it looks fine, honestly. The gameplay outside of that final stretch looks good for what it is. The stories, I mean, I'm as someone who's not into Lord of the Rings, I think it seems, I guess as a spin-off side story, it seems like seems okay for what it is, I guess. The problem is that this game didn't really know how to end, or either that, or like Teo said, maybe they ran out of time. Because yeah, it does indeed feel like, or maybe what they could have done. Here's what they could have done something akin to what Final Fantasy 16 does, which is have a more proper boss battle, and cap that off with an amazing icon battle. That is, yeah, very QTE heavy, but the spectacle. Like, think of it as like your big payoff after beating the proper boss.
Again,
this
like
doesn't really do that. It's just that.
Like Azura's Wrath instead.
Yeah, or Azura's Wrath, sure. I guess it's fine for what it is. The music, yeah, I didn't particularly find the music particularly great either, personally. The visuals look fine, and the voice acting is really good, considering that we have an all-star cast here. So, yeah, it looks like it's a perfectly fine game for what it is.
Alright, Jova.
Yeah, no, I actually think this game is pretty good. Mind you, it does have a lot of warts. Let me sum up my overall thoughts with the game. You start for the story, you stay for the Nemesis system. The Nemesis system is easily the best attribute of the gameplay, with how it will pretty much be what characterizes your player experience for this game. Now, as for the story, that is not to say that the story is overall a slouch. I had complaints about, how it did feel like it meandered or was kind of a borderline background element at times, but what the story does do well is it introduces these interesting meta characters. Some that you may recognize, or new ones that fit in the world and context of it. Again, my favorite of it is probably the dwarf,
Torvin, yeah.
Torvin. Yeah, again,
We'll technically see him again in the sequel, but don't get your hopes too high, Jova.
I was kind of hoping he could have tagged along. Like, okay, I feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity not to have you build up a party of sorts, which I feel could have really added to the gameplay, essentially. There are some promising characters. Some sadly feel like they exit the plot before they get to do much. Although, in regards to exiting the plot before you get to do much, the Black Hand, the guy we are working the guy we're working our way through the game to get at, he, okay, unless he can see this in the afterlife, he kind of gets off scot-free. Oh, sure, yeah, he dies, but it's by his own hand and pretty much by his own grace. But hey, he dies revealing Sauron, so you think that's gonna be a tough fight. Nope! QTEs, and Sauron is dealt with in, I think, a little over a minute. Like Sauron. The flipping Sauron. And yeah, I do get it that Kellen Brimmore is kind of like Sauron's kryptonite in sorts. That's apparently why they wanted to use him to bring Sauron back, but that's the thing. Because of that, he is able to manipulate Sauron from within. Like, you think Sauron maybe would have seen that move coming?
He was kind of desperate, remember, at this point he did not know the location of the ring, and he was just defeated by the White Council as a necromancer. He needed to reform fast and have a new plan.
There is that. So overall, I don't want to say the story is overall bad, but I do feel like ultimately it feels like a bust. Especially since it doesn't even properly end. It's more like just, it feels like it ends on a cutscene that you'd see in the middle of the game instead of the end. But since, you know, we have the sequel to continue the story, thankfully, it's not like it ended in absolute failure, so I'll just say that the story left a lot to be desired. That being said, the atmosphere and music, while not from the actual tracks from the movie, I feel like the atmosphere and music work well enough to make you feel like you are very much in the world of Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy to an extent. So, like, no, in terms of being essentially a Lord of the Rings simulator, this game does a pretty good job. So yeah, again, my final bouts are, you'll stay for the Nemesis system, but there are some nice things to enjoy. Hopefully the sequel pretty much just improves on every aspect.
Well, that's what we will find out eventually. As for me, I still really enjoy this game, but having played also recently the sequel, it was a bit hard to come back to this because of a more primitive stuff in comparison. Again, it's kind of like replaying Arkham Asylum after doing Arkham Knight, for example, you know, in terms of stupid gameplay. The story is technically fine for what it wants to do, but you can definitely tell it's a bit undercooked and probably bogged down by having the game being chained to the previous console generation, which probably limited a lot what the devs could do. Also, this allows me to mention a small correction that I forgot. Radmack was not voiced by Nolan North, but instead Phil Lamar. I confused the voice actors.
Phil Lamar? Interesting.
Yeah. Again, guy's versatile. But no, again, I still enjoy it for what I want to do and how it integrates with the rest of the bigger world at large. And again, the devs even bother to try to not make it too obvious with the fan service. You sure, Gollum is a given, but you know, they could have easily just, you know, placed Gandalf there and said, oh, he was just traveling around the location at that point. But no, they actually bother to, you know, be more restrained and limiting, you know, the kind of characters that Talia would encounter. And you know, potentially interact with any what kind of manner, you know. So that again is appreciated. Again, the gameplay is definitely the highlight. The world is literally your oyster to do whatever you want. And maybe did not give too much justice with this because they mostly condensed what you can do throughout the world. But trust me, because I said did not pull any punches, instead when it comes to the sequel, you will get a better idea of what this beast is capable of doing, you know, with these different variations and all the such when it comes to Shadow War.
Nice.
Again, the real thing is mostly the boss fights. Similar to the Arkham games, this franchise, this particular set of games, did not know how to do 100% well boss fights. You know, the hammer is easily the best one. The fight against the tower is alright as a stealth round, you know, to spice things up, but nothing too ecstatic. And again, the Lycanthropes and Sauron are just a joke. You know. The White Graug also can count potentially, but that can be also a bit of a test of patience. So I can understand if someone might not be 100%, you know, super into that, but still. Again, I like also the cast that they chose for this. I mostly played it with the Italian dub originally, so this was also my big exposure to the English original with his voice acting. And yeah, they did actually a decent enough job. What the people that they had, you know, and what they had to do. I know for a fact that apparently Talion's face at the very least is modeled a bit after Troy Baker, because in the second game he's even more noticeable as such, interesting enough. So I do wonder if he himself did the mocap for that, for the cutscenes and everything, instead of having a stunt double, who knows. But the music is also technically fine, not as good as the score of a movies, but again, decent for what he wants to do. Again, it's similar to Terminator Resistance when you get down to it. It's not that kind of perfect kind of game, but because you can definitely tell the devs are trying their asses off in order to do something new that breaks a bit the mold, and there is good stuff in there. It's the kind of stuff that needs encouragement, you know, more than anything, which it can produce better results. And better results happen with one or two caveats, but that's what we will need to find out. However, the game is technically not over yet, because pieces of stories DLCs were released that we will cover in the next 4 parts. One about the Lord of the Hunt that takes place roughly between the defeat of the tower and the final mission, and the Bright Lord, the one that tells an abridged tale on what Celebrimbor did after he stole the ring before his final confrontation against Sauron.
Fun.
So see you for the next part where we start the Lord of the Hunt DLC. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.